Good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you and welcome Angelica and Gabby from Psychologists for being with Rich and I on the Happy Mind today. We just wanted to invite you into this space to have a chat with you specifically around coping strategies off the back of COVID, and to just dive into your experience and what you're dealing with in terms of supporting patients and clients of the clinics at the moment. So over to you. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure. I think we can start with what people are struggling with, and then we can talk about some strategies. The collective grief, I think it's something that we could talk about, and then Gabby can share, elaborate a little bit on that, and you guys can ask us questions as well about the collective grief, and then from there I can go on to some other aspects as well.
So when you say collective grief, are we talking about the general sentiments and feelings that's permeating as a result of what's transpiring out there at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think it's been very interesting. Angelica and I were talking that we're not only sitting with clients and talking about their problems, but we have experienced this with the clients. Yeah, so we are in the same boat.
Yeah, personally and professionally.
Yeah, so it's been a very interesting experience for us as a professional, go through the grief with our clients. Yeah, so having the shock of, is this, what is happening with the world? The denial, is this really true or not? Yeah, and then having the anger of the changes that we're all having to adapt and going through the feelings of sadness and acceptance of what we have to do now. So I think for me personally, it's been a journey traveling with the clients and going through my own emotions. And
that must be really therapeutic when you're in that space and you're having to coach others through it, but you're also coaching ourselves through that.
Yeah.
We usually are hearing about the crisis, but we're all in crisis. It's collective.
Yeah,
we all going through losses, identity, jobs, outlets that we used to have, money, relationships. There's so much, the structure, the routine, everything.
Yeah, there's really no one that hasn't been affected. And then, of course, ongoing now, there's really just a whole lot of uncertainty. How long this is going to go on for, and life afterwards. So, what's the main topic that's come up for you with your clients in terms of supporting them initially? Has there been a general common theme of particular area in particular with your clients?
Look, I think the first thing is to understand what's happening and validate those emotions, and not to deny that you're experiencing that, but guiding the clients that it's okay to feel angry, that's okay to feel quite sad. But I think for me, one of the most important thing, and I'm guiding clients, is to make sure that we go through the stages of grief. And the last one that we tend to forget is the finding the meaning. So when we lose someone, or we have a breakup in a relationship, or we have changes in our lives, it's finding, what does that mean, that experience? What have I learned from this experience? What are the things that I'm going to change in my life? And I think that's really important, that people have the opportunity to sit and reflect, because we're gonna have a whole different experience. Yeah, so I guess that's one of the strategies to find the meaning.
But is that kind of trying to find the silver lining in the situation as well? Is that trying to find a positive within the situation, or just come to a resolve with what's happening?
Look, I think it could be a positive thing, yeah, and it could be, you know, something about yourself, because with this isolation, I think we have been able to be more in contact with ourselves than ever, you know, to really see and discover who we are having a close relationship, or who we are, and how we deal with being alone. So I think the way that I see the finding the meaning, it could be that you discovering something on yourself that perhaps you have to work on, or a relationship that you need to review, or a job situation.
Yeah, and that finding meaning as a strategy, as a coping mechanism. I guess there is that fight against the virus, which is global, and it comes, you know, it's a collective fight. But in finding meaning in the pandemic brings us to another fight, which is an internal fight. And we can talk more about that internal fight and things that come with that through this process. But I believe the healing of the meaning is when you get to the purpose, and finding that purpose, because purpose means connecting with what matters. Yeah, and when you connect with what matters, there is a growth, there is a healing there. Yeah, and so that has been a massive strategy, I think, that we found.
Do you find a lot of people like have that understanding of the purpose, and can they, as individuals, you know, a lot of people, I guess a broad question, are a lot of us just moving through life without that real core purpose, and all of a sudden something like this comes and pulls up anchor, and we're just now going, I'm floating adrift. And do you then have to help them navigate for potentially the first time to actually go, well, what is the purpose of that?
I think this is part of the work, you know, to helping people realize how to get to their meaning and how to get to their purpose, you know, what really matters in life. And I think we having, with this self-isolation, with the lockdown, the luxury of time to dig deeper and look into that and reflect on things that we didn't have the time, you know, to do before. So.
And I suppose some people would see that as a luxury and others not so much, because a lot of people like to stay busy to avoid being or having to confront their own stuff, you know?
Definitely. But I think even, and that's mainstream, that's what we get all the time. But I think people have been, it's forced in a way to do that. From simple things like, for example, a client who works, is a high profile, you know, person in the city, commutes, you know, every day, gets home at 7 p.m., is now working from home and can do morning tea with her kids, you know. She can prepare that and have that morning tea, and she can log off for 10 minutes and have that morning tea. So those meaningful moments, and that creates meaning, and that is the purpose.
Do you find people are embracing that small gift of time that we haven't had? Like, from your client's perspective, is this kind of been a window to a potential other way of living besides, as Carly mentioned, that constant busyness, and are they embracing that or rejecting it, battling?
Yeah, I believe that people really struggled with the concept, because when I mentioned about the internal fight, there will be things that will come up that will be extremely confronting to a lot of people that they didn't have the time or chose not to before to deal with. But as we go through the process, we can see a lot of people embracing
being human beings,
yes,
human doings.
yeah. And that was another, that's what God is saying, was another thing that it was another struggle apart from the collective grief that we noticed in with the clients that we see, and in general, is that a lot of people attach self-worth to performance. So people tend to frame their identity on what they did, or how much they do, or what they did, which is not available anymore to a lot of people. Yeah, they lost their jobs, they're working in a different way. It has changed.
They can't be that productive.
They can't be that productive. Like a lot of my clients, they struggle with like, I need to deliver this, but I have the kids homeschooling, and I have. I said, you're not going to be able to deliver the same. You're not going to be able to perform the same way. Can you bring self-compassion to that suffering of not being the person that you were? Can you feel good about yourself even though you cannot perform at that level? Yeah. So I think that's another thing that's coming as well for people to see, and that's a common thing that happens for people when they retire.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And we're seeing that now with young people going through that, that reframing their identity and focusing more on the being rather than the doing.
Balanced life.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's quite hard, I guess, because we as a society, we are forced to the doing in so many levels. Yeah. So I guess it's not, we're not judging, it's something that, we have tasks at school, work, and so it's something that we understand, but I guess we help clients to navigate through that with less suffering and more knowledge about the choices that they're making.
Yeah, and I think perspective has helped as well people to be more accommodating of that, in terms of before we would focus on individual problems, and now we focus on survival, on being alive and being well. Yeah, so that when perspective is shifting in that perspective, I think we find more room to that kind of reflection as well.
So how do we go from being someone that is, I won't say the victim is probably not a consequence of the society and system that we've all been brought up in, where, as you guys said, we've been taught to do from a very young age and just slot in and play that game for a long time, whereas all of a sudden nature or whatever has brought this situation upon us where we can't do. What strategies are you bringing, can we do as people that, again, all of a sudden that they're facing that loss of identity, because normally I'm consumed with that, doing this? How do we bring them back to being content and, just as you said before, human being rather than doing? What can they do?
I think to answer that question, for me, it's remind me some of the sessions that I have, that clients are saying to me, for the first time, I'm having permission to just be. And it's being, and then we talk about, so how does that, how are you feeling about that? And I said, wow, it actually feels amazing, that I can, but they have permission because they can't do it.
Yeah.
So we, in the sessions with the clients, I guess the strategy is to elaborate and explore, wow, what if we could somehow bring a little bit of that, into the life when it returns to normality. Yeah, so let's talk about it, what is it that you're not doing, that you're being right now, that we can extend, and
a reflection on contribution as well. Contribution, reflecting on our own significance and how we contribute is actually been proven to be linked to resilience. And from that, what Gabi is saying, to draw from that and go, okay, so what is your significance? what is, you know, and it goes back to the purpose, and it goes back to the meaning and to the being, you know, and that is at work and in relationships. When you do this, you know, there are lots of companies, big companies out there with beautiful missions and visions, you know, do they workers know that what they do actually makes a difference and how they do it? You know, so that kind of reflection and that kind of talk, I think, has been very enlightening and important to people to see that singularity of that being in a broader way than the tasks that I perform every day and the hats that I wear every day. If that makes sense.
So if I'm sitting at home and, you know, in that space of trying to come to some resolution, so you're saying reflection is a really powerful tool for someone to use? Like how could I unpack that if I'm on my own?
It's a tricky one, because people, we live in our heads, most of us, and we tend to overthink, and we tend to, you know, our fears and concerns, you know, will take over. Yeah. So I believe that we need to use a very holistic approach in order to do that. Meditation, yoga, you know, reflective, you know, journal, exercise, what you put in your body, what you eat, you know, checking in with a counselor or psychologist, or, you know, a group of people that you're comfortable with. So if you have those things going, you feel equipped to then sit down and reflect on your life. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, go on.
You go. There you go.
I was just going to say, support and community. It's so crucial, and yet, you know, we have to kind of navigate a new way with that as well. Just staying connected. And I know I've got my little ritual every morning, and I go down to the beach and take coffee, and I see familiar faces, and I just have a little walk, and that kind of kicks me into, even though I can't necessarily stand around and chat for too long, but I still feel connected to people, just to stay in little habits and do things throughout the day that make me feel, you know, if I feel that rise of emotion, just ground me again, whether it's take a bath or call a friend or do meditation, but just allow those waves of emotion to pass through, and then just do whatever I need to do to support getting to, whether it be the next hour or the second part of the day or get to the next day, but just to stay connected and allow and not get overwhelmed. I think it's almost day by day at the moment, isn't it?
I think it's so important what you're saying, Kylie, because as human beings, I think we're not supposed to be experiencing life by ourselves. Yeah, we need that community, that connection, and especially when we are suffering. So when we are going through a crisis, and we are threatened by, you know, this virus at the moment. So I think it's sharing with people, you know, it's be in contact with your feelings, and it's okay to feel fearful, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to, but that idea of sharing, community, I think it's really detrimental.
And there's not one person that I haven't met that's been affected. So if they're not financially affected, it's that they can't see their elderly 90-year-old parent in the nursing home, or you know, they're co-parenting with someone and that's a really difficult situation, or you know, whatever the case may be, that their plans for the year have all turned upside down, or, you know, it's not just financial, but everyone's got it. So there's actually so much storytelling, and then all the barriers are down as well, because everyone's happy to say, hey, I had to call Centrelink today, or like, I've never heard so many people be comfortable with those kind of conversations, actually, you know. Guards are down and people are pretty open, because everyone's like, you know, what are you experiencing? And it's nice to also hear what people are doing to cope.
Yeah, historically, I guess when when we faced, you know, an outside threat as a community. You know, I think apparently, from what I have learned, is that when communities become stronger, this is the time when communities become stronger. This is the time, and that's one of the silver linings of what is happening. You know, that's the sense of community, the seeing kindness in others, which is another beautiful silver lining as well. The time for reflection. And yeah, we are here because we are survivors as well. Another part of our history. We're only here because we survived. You know, generation after generation, we have been through a lot as humans. So I think we're capable of going through this, and
a lot more than we realize.
A lot more than we realize. And I think one of the big things that it really it stops people sometimes from moving forward is the whole concept around or understanding around uncertainty. And uncertainty is part of our lives. You know, it has been, it will always be part of our lives. And the only thing that, you know, is constant in our lives is change. So when people start realizing that, you know, wow, we don't know what's going to be tomorrow, what's going to happen to my kids at school, or what's going to happen with my job, or when I'm going to be able to travel again. We don't know anything anyway. We create as humans an illusion
that we know the future,
that around us, in this false sense of control, which is okay. We cope with that. We need that to cope. But the bottom line is, we don't know. Yeah. So when we embrace that uncertainty, when we stop chasing fear out and bring love in and bring us acceptance in, when we reframe the fear and the uncertainty, I think it makes it much easier for us to move with that fear, with that uncertainty forward.
So in a way, has that world we've created, that illusion, as you guys just mentioned, as much as it's given people that sense of control, it's also limited their behavior for growth and change, because we become so predictable that I know what tomorrow will bring because I'm going to do the same as I've done today, the same as I've done yesterday, and so on. So we set up this world where we're no longer really growing and expanding. And all of a sudden, here comes this massive, no, you have no control. Let go of all that. And does this represent a great opportunity for people to then to go into that uncertainty, be a little bit more vulnerable, like Carly was mentioning before, and deals to, you know, change? Can they then facilitate from that more growth?
Quite interesting. A couple of clients with anxiety, we struggle with anxiety before the COVID. They actually mentioned, "I'm actually doing quite well because this is my life." You know, this is, you know, now actually people get me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a very good example of what we were just talking about. Yeah.
And I guess now what we're seeing is, I mean, for those clients and for some people that had so much change, is the anxiety about going back to normality. So how I'm going to face, you know, how I'm going to face social events, to see my extended family again, to readapt to school, to my work or university. So that all this stuff is coming up, you know. Is that a
lot of the introverts are going, I've been loving this time?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there is that. And I think the other thing, what were you going to say?
No, I was just thinking about the idea of, also I think it's important for us to say, to help people in terms of the strategies that so understanding that this is a grief and a loss process, but understanding that everyone, so if I lost my job or if I lost my social contact, it doesn't mean that your loss is bigger than mine. So for people to understand that every loss is a loss. Yeah, so sometimes we have, some of our clients will say, oh, I just, I haven't lost my job and I have a lovely family, but I'm really grieving my friends and I feel really bad about that. Well, it is no need to feel bad. I think we're not here to compare the losses and the suffering. We're here to acknowledge that everyone has their own loss, and
with different meanings to them, and how they impact on people.
So your loss is important. It doesn't matter what is it that it has changed in your life. So I think giving people permission to go through that process.
And I can imagine quite a common loss theme would be friendship, because so many people are heightened by stress, and then they go offline because they're caught up in their own concerns, and they're valid, but they don't cope with the stress response. And so then, they say that their problems are bigger than someone else's, and then there's big falling outs. I've heard quite a lot of these stories, and so that's a really interesting thing that I think a lot of people will be experiencing, is also loss of friendship, purely based on stress, actually, and not based on anything that's maybe worthy of a relationship breakdown. So yeah.
It sounds like that suffering game, doesn't it? You come home, you think your day was bad, my day was worse, and just so on.
Well, there's a story of holding space for people, and then there's also so many of us can relate to other stories too. So you want to share, and it's just it's also wise to be mindful that no one, like coming back to what we were saying, no one's problem is bigger than others. We're all experiencing something. But just to be mindful of that people don't always make the best decisions in a heightened stress state. So you might get a reaction from a friend that seems really extreme, but it's not because they're choosing that that reaction. It's just that they're completely heightened by stress.
What advice can you give to people in that situation, especially right now? Like there's so much, I guess, external agitation, as we said, that collective grief and stress and anxiety out there. Is there things people should be avoiding, if possible, to alleviate those anxieties, and what should be doing?
One of the things with the social distancing, we have to be very careful not to fall into that emotional distancing trap. So checking in with people, that will make a massive difference, because when you're checking in with people, you're talking about yourself as well. And if that's a chain effect, so if you check in with someone will do. So I think that emotional closeness is still very important in times of social distancing. And the other thing that I would recommend people to avoid is the overexposure to media and information. It can be extremely detrimental and affect people's mental health in a very bad way as well. So try to look for reliable, sounded, information, trusted websites and government, websites.
That kind of leads into a question I was saying, because it seems to be that there's almost, when you do, occasionally we'll go on social media and check stuff out, and there really seems to be, there's almost this divide, these battle lines are being drawn, and we seem, even up, I live on the border of Queensland and New South Wales, and in the origins of this, it was like, stay in your town, don't come into mine. So there's really old tribal, primal part of our brain seem to have taken over. And now we've got, again, on social media, there's this conspiracy, there's anti-vaxxers, there's this. So it really seems to be that, again, as humans, we're putting ourselves on either side of the equation, and battle lines are being drawn. From your guys' perspective as professionals that help people navigate, I guess, our inner turmoils and belief systems, what can people do to sort of not get so caught up in who's right and who's wrong? Like, what do you suggest in that situation? To because we can have family members that believe one thing and they're quite projective, and so on. So any advice around that?
Look, I think what I see is it's a little bit like, when you're counseling couples and you think who is right and who is wrong, and there is no right or wrong, there's different opinions. Yeah. And when you say that to people, it's like, oh, okay, so we can continue to be together with different opinions. So I think it's bringing that idea where sometimes we don't need to define who is right and wrong. We can hear two different opinions and say, okay, so this is my kind of view on that. But I think what is really important, what Angelica was saying, is that some people will say, oh, I can watch the news, I can, debate about this, I can be involved as much as I want because, I'm cool with all this stuff. But what we see is sometimes is that people are exposed to that. And then afterwards, they will start experiencing even post-traumatic stress disorders from things that they've been seeing, hearing, exposed to symptoms of depression, anger. And so I think one of our recommendations is for people to be aware that those symptoms don't come straight away. Yeah, so you might be coping really well with all this, but make sure that you look after yourself, that you watch for symptoms because they can come afterwards too.
Which is a reactive, a delayed grief experience, which is quite common as well in around this type of issue. But also, Rich, about what you were saying in terms of, I think through I think genuine compassion happens when I can hold space for your vulnerability without judgment and without my set of opinions in the middle of that. And I think compassion is a strategy, silver lining of what we live in. The same way as Gabi was saying, we can agree that we have different opinions, but I can also hold space for your vulnerability, for your fears, for your concerns, for your, whatever you're thinking about. Perhaps you have a theory that's completely crazy, and I think but it's okay. I can hold space for that because I can empathize with what is going on for you.
This is really giving them respect that they're entitled to their opinion and belief, but having compassion and not needing to bite back all the time.
I was, I don't know, I think I was reading something on a magazine the other day. This one thing, I bought a magazine and I haven't bought a magazine for years. But I bought the Mind Food magazine, which I find very nice, very fun. And he was talking about how judgmental he was of this man who had his boot full of toilet paper, when he was leaving the grocery store. And he came home and he was talking to his wife about, this old man had this boot full of toilet paper, such a selfish, probably in the beginning of the pandemic when there were no restrictions about how many rolls you could buy. But, and the wife then said, well, what's behind that behavior? Yeah, it can come across as selfish behavior. Maybe this man went to war or through recession or
it's fear.
Who knows? So that kind of
understanding
and compassion.
You might have had a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Maybe a community or a small community or village.
Yeah, I think that it's a great message. We want to create a society that's less judgmental, and so we have to look what are we doing, how are we judging. So I think that's the beginning of any change. If you're looking to what can you do.
As to what Gandhi said, be the change.
Be the change. Exactly.
That's a life practice in itself, really. We've always got work to do in that area. We can always improve.
So are you guys confident about when people return to normal life? How do we take these? You know, how do we not get, you know, the machine gets pressed start again, and how do people then, you know, use the tools of reflection to be able to cultivate that, as I said, all this stuff, you know, maybe this is a time that it's a beautiful gift that we've been given.
Beautiful gift. Yeah.
How can we make sure that it's not just, oh, do you remember 2020, that holiday we had for like 8 weeks? And actually, you know, what can we do to, again, maybe inspire change collectively, to have more compassion, kindness, vulnerability? Because I'm kind of hearing beneath that surface as well that I think vulnerability is that key one, that we can all let our own guards down. What can we do, like, so we just don't fall back to, okay, back to my old programs and patterns all over again?
Well, we're hoping for a new consciousness around the way that we live and do things in life. Yeah. Based on this reflection that's happening because of what we're going through. Because of we will be coming from a place of fear. And it will really depend on how people will approach that. If you're coming from a place of fear can paralyze you, but fear can also move you, and you can evolve from that fearful place. So I believe that it's a lot about the individual. We cannot hope anything that anything will happen, that people will change if we don't make that change in ourselves. So I think it's based on this work and these realizations and these reflections that and the suffering that people are going through now, that we will have a new way of living life.
It's awesome to hear, like, professionals like you guys say that like a global shift in consciousness would be great. Because I think it's you know, it'd be a wonderful thing to step out of this and to keep carrying this momentum forward of people just appreciating those smaller, simple things, and as Gabby said, come back to human beings and not human doings. And so again, the whole concept of what we're doing is as the Happy Mind Project. It's not so much about that playing happy all the time and pretending. That's because we could more consider a happy mind as a positive mind, resilience, and using those resources of creativity, intuition, and in our intelligence, which when we're stressed, we know we lose all that. What do you suggest people do, and this time and moving forward, to be able to cultivate a happy mind, so therefore we can be more compassionate, kind, caring, and creative?
I think for your project, it's a very good thing to do. Because the other day I was in the car listening to the radio, and it was the first time in my life that I heard an advertisement, a meditation ad.
A meditation ad? Oh.
Yeah, a meditation ad, and it was a very popular radio station. I was like, wow, things are changing. You know, when would you hear something about meditation, you know, on the radio? Yeah, it's like, wow, this is it. This is where we want things to go.
What Eckhart Tolle's been talking about for 20 years.
Sorry?
This is what Eckhart Tolle's been talking about for 20 years.
Exactly.
So meditation, meditation would be one thing you guys would recommend?
Yes.
Yeah, look, I think it's, as you know, you guys know that I work with a lot of teenagers with eating disorder and self-harming, body issues, you know. So I think being aware of how are we looking after ourselves, you know, in terms of what are we eating, and I come from a no dieting approach, so I believe, you know, people should be exposed to all sorts of food, but we're all different. So being knowing who you are, knowing what your body needs, what's good for you, I think that's really important, rather than going with the world. What is it? We should eat kale now, so therefore we're gonna eat kale. So kind of seeing what works for you. I think that's really important, because for some people, guided meditation is really helpful. Other people, other types of meditation is helpful, or just a yoga. So it's really finding what is it for me.
Nourishment, really, nourishment. So in what you eat and what you do and how you think and how you act and the people you're with.
Yeah, and taking, and I think the other thing will be that reflection, Rich, about taking the time to realize what is important to you. Taking stock of that time, of those things that are, and it's exactly what you're saying, There's a lot of
journaling. Would that be kind of a journaling process that you kind of mentioned before?
Yeah, journaling is extremely effective as well. There's evidence-based behind that too. Exercising, mental health and exercising, being in nature. Yeah. But really it's about you, not about how my friend dresses or manages her life or is coping. It's really about that acceptance and self-compassion. Taking self-compassionate breaks when things get too much. Taking that 5 minutes of self-compassionate break to name that emotion, do some breathing, feel grounded again, and then keep going.
So when you say that, so if I'm feeling an emotion, go in, identify the emotion and name it.
Yeah, there's a very, very quick strategy, which is, let's use anger, right? Which is a common one. And you go in and what is the emotion? And sometimes just naming that emotion, just naming it, it's like a light bulb. Very powerful, very powerful. Sometimes people will struggle to name that emotion. There's so many handouts on the internet these days that you put like a feelings wheel or naming feelings, a bunch of feelings. You get that handout to go, okay, if I can't name my emotion, what is it? Oh, this is exactly it. I found it, So naming that feeling and then going, okay, I know this is how I feel right now. Where in my body do I feel that feeling? I can feel it right down my neck, right there. I can feel that feeling now. Okay, so how intense is that feeling from 0 to 10? Oh, it's 8. It's about 8. And okay, so if that feeling was a color, what color would that be? Would it be black? Would it be red? So just by doing that, I'm grounding myself. Yeah.
And understanding your emotions.
And understanding what's going on with me as well.
Yeah.
So we're kind of almost removing ourselves from it in terms of mentally observing it rather than being immersed in the whole situation.
Yeah. Because what the feeling does, it activates, your emotional center, your limbic system. It's going off. Your frontal cortex is completely unplugged. Yeah. By doing that, your frontal cortex will kick in again slowly, and the emotions will calm down.
Yeah, I think that what Angelica is saying is allowing those feelings. So understanding what is the feeling, allowing that feeling to be there, but also understanding that you're not the feeling, you're just experiencing that feeling. So I'm not an angry person, but I'm feeling angry. So if I have to talk to that person, should I come from who I am, which is I'm a kind and loving person, or should I come from this feeling that I'm experiencing? So I think that's a really important technique to recognize the feeling, allow the feeling. So it's okay to feel the way that I am feeling, not judge if it's a bad or good feeling. It's just a feeling. But I am not the feeling.
Yeah, which moves people from feeling the shameful being, to feeling bad about that feeling of guilt. Oh, I shouted with the kids again. I feel guilty about that, but I'm not a bad mom. There's a difference there. Yeah.
In terms of motherhood, this actually reminds me a lot of books that I read for my children. So it's interesting, and there's so many books now for parents to guide children through feelings, and I don't think I ever had any of that education as a child. So for a lot of people, it would be educating ourselves as adults through that process that we perhaps never had as, you know, whatever reason, less conscious parents or availability, or it just wasn't the need of the time 30, 40 years ago. But
that technique is quite it's an old technique, and it's called the rain technique, which is really lovely. The rain technique. So the R is for recognizing, A is allowing that feeling, I is identifying, and the N is non-judgmental of that feeling. So, you know, it's quite interesting. Kids will learn through that.
And will relate to that as well.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. I like it because it's almost the rain, you know, like it comes and goes, and it's okay. We're not judging when, you know, it's just something natural, just like the rain. So I find quite a beautiful technique.
Beautiful.
Practical tool. I like it.
Yeah. But in terms of, I don't know, I sometimes I ask my clients to think about this idea of, because as Angelica was saying, we all like perhaps fearful or thinking about the future, what's going to happen, how I'm going to do that, or how I'm feeling about the situation. We pretty much in our brain. And that's why meditation is so good, because, you know, we can use more of the right side of the brain. We can calm like those two, you know, parts of the brain. But I guess sometimes it's hard because we're just in the middle of something. I ask people to say, well, how does it feel in your heart? You know, such a powerful, so if we take that ideal that, you know, those plannings, how does it feel in your heart? And sometimes I go into how does it feel in your gut? And then checking with those three parts of your body, would that be the same decision? Would you feel the same way? You know, so I find that quite useful to
extremely useful.
Just almost like you spreading the energy through those three big parts of your body and seeing how does it feel. And sometimes people who have different opinion, in my heart, I feel I'll be okay, you know, or like, oh, what, you know, so that we explore those.
If your heart could speak now, what would it say? Sometimes we ask that question.
That's a good question.
And people go, I have no idea. And I'm not judging people saying we find it hard, you know, to speak from the heart, because we rationalize, we reason all the time. So that's another beautiful way of disconnecting from the mind, from the thoughts, from the business of the mind to a place from the heart, to the heart.
It's really been the way we've been brought up too, isn't it? And educated, and we've been so disconnected from that feeling space that, you know, come back to the rational logic. The whole educational system's built around that logical brain, and so to come back into that feeling space, I think I really love that question. What would your heart say? I think that's really
that's beautiful.
Imagine they taught that. To kids at school all the time. What would your heart say right now?
I think it's a really nice way to reflect too. You know, when people lose their temper and go offline, it's like, how does it feel? How did it even feel to be that angry or have that experience? And nice way to. Beautiful.
There is a beautiful movie as a documentary. I watched in a retreat. We watched
the power of the heart. It's an old documentary.
An old documentary that's beautiful. They have a little book based on the movie, and they have all, you know, these beautiful people talking and giving, you know, a little bit of the understanding about that. It's just very nice.
Beautiful. Thank you. And that ties back in so much to what and how the Happy Mind project really evolved, was Rich and I wanting to give from the heart, you know, and really that's the first thing that we talked about was more love and less fear. So that's just a really beautiful way to wrap it up, ladies, because it's just perfect to leave on that note.
That was really, really beautiful. Thanks so much, guys, for your wisdom and sharing, and really took
You're welcome. Yes, thank you for having us, and congratulations on the project. It's amazing initiative. And
we've been using.
Yeah, we have been, and we have been recommending clients, and they're really enjoying it too.
Thank you. Thanks. And so how would people get in contact with the clinic, Angelica and Gabby? What's the best way to contact you? The website, is it?
Website, or we have a central number, a head office with a central number people can call.
Okay, great. So we'll add all that into the details when we put all this up online. And then you've got Instagram as well, which is B-Psych Clinic.
Yes, it is B-Psych Clinic. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you both.
Thank you guys.
Time, and we'll see you on one of the breathwork sessions soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night. Thanks again.
Bye.
Good night.